Hello everyone, and welcome to another tutorial for Web Design Tuts. I'm Justin Hubbard, and today I'll be showing you how to create CSS3 tooltips. We'll be creating two different types of tooltips. One is web safe and the other is mobile friendly, where basically it's clickable, because in mobile phones it doesn't allow you to hover over anything, so you have to be able to click on it in order to show the tooltips. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be creating. So this is what we will be creating, click tips with automatic repositioning. Now I talk later on in the tutorial about using JavaScript to create positioning in the tooltips, but you may not have to do that since the tooltips is basically automatic repositioning. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'll pull up Firebug here and I'll hover over one of these and select it, and we'll go ahead and move the margin over. If you can't see that, I'll move it over. We have a display inline and a margin left and right of 30 pixels. Let's go ahead and change that to 300. You see how it's right next to the hovered element? Well, let's go ahead and change that to 300 and see how it moves it around. Well, if you hover over it, changes with the position anyway. So let's go ahead and make that 500. Okay, and the tooltip still stays where it's supposed to be, in line with the hovered element. Okay, so that's what we're going to be creating. Just refresh this here. So yeah, it's really awesome. It's really cool. Some CSS3 tooltips, you know, they're really cool for to decrease support if you have a lot of support on your website, or to give different hints to people on the fly. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the code and see how this is going to be created. So we're going to be using Dreamweaver here, and that's because for some of you that aren't quite familiar with hand coding, Dreamweaver gives you the ability to use hints. And what hints are is basically you type something in, like let's say a div, and then it'll give you the class. It gives you different options inside of that. So we're not going to go into Dreamweaver, but we will use that just because it is better for beginners. And that's actually a statement that a lot of people would argue with, because a lot of people would prefer a beginner to start with a text editor, and I would agree to a point, but for the sake of this tutorial we will use Dreamweaver. So let's go ahead and start with the title, and the title is going to be CSS3 Tooltips Hover and AMP Clickable. Okay, this is just a title for the for this tutorial. Really, you really don't need it. So let's go ahead and add a style sheet by putting link rel style sheet. See, the Dreamweaver gives you the hint right there. Put in href. And we're going to target the styles folder, the themes folder, and then we're going to grab tip transparency.css. Okay, and as you notice, I haven't added type because you don't need to add the type with HTML5. Same with the doc type HTML here, that's an HTML5 doc type. You don't need anything else. And the meta char set of UTF-8, you don't need anything else there either. Also, for the purposes of this tutorial, we are going to add another style sheet which only styles the background and the layout of what you see in the tutorial, but when you put the tooltips in your own projects, you probably won't need this. So let's go ahead and target the styles folder and use tut.css. Next thing we're going to want to do is use our if IE9 statement. So in order to do that, we will use this if less than IE9 space 9, and go ahead and just close it out here. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab our Internet Explorer style sheet. So we use link rel style sheets and the href, and we're going to go ahead and target the styles folder and grab IE.css. I'm going to go ahead and just add a media of screen to that. Okay, and also IE7 doesn't like advanced selectors, so for that we will go ahead and use a bit of JavaScript. I mean, it's only used for Internet Explorer 7 and 8. So to do that, we will just target the Dean Edwards IE9.js fix, WJS, Google code.com/svn/version/2.1, and in parentheses we'll put beta 4 because they are in beta 4, and then /IE9.js, and that's it for that. Okay, and so that's all there is for the head here. You just need to call your style sheet, your tip transparency. Obviously there are different styles available in the source files, so you're welcome to follow along with any style that you like to, but we're going to use the transparency for this version. And again, the tut.css is not required for this to work properly, but it is good if you want to follow exactly along with this tutorial. If less than IE9, we're going to be using the IE.css, which uses CSS3 to help out Internet Explorer 7 and 8 with things like box shadow, border radius, etc. And then we're going to use the Dean Edwards JavaScript code so that we can fix the selectors for IE7 and 8. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and create our first tooltip. Alright, so to do that we will put an unordered list, go ahead and enter your first list item, and we're going to use the li class of tip. Alright, and this is your main class. Okay, it's basically the box around the entire tooltip, and we use this class to target other classes, which you'll see later on. Okay, so next thing we will do is go ahead and create a link, and our link will just be a simple hash, and then we'll make this the left tip. Okay, so we just use a simple hash so that we can make this link active. You can actually click on this link, so that's the purposes of that. And then we'll go ahead, for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to use strong, and it'll have a class of tooltip L for left, and we'll just put add images in the tooltip, add the class tooltip L, and you'll see as we add more tooltips there will be the class of tooltip R, tooltip B, and tooltip T. And these are the classes that you can add to any tooltip depending on the position you want your tooltip to be. Do you want it to be on the left with the arrow pointing to the right hand side at the hovered element, or do you want it to be on the right, the top, or the bottom? Okay, you can even add images by just adding an image with a class of ref, and we'll go ahead and target the images folder and grab portfolio.jpg with a height of 80 and a width of 80. These are actually the best dimensions. Let me move this over. For the images inside of the tooltips, and for the sake of validity, we'll go ahead and add the alt tag here. You can also add links inside of the tooltips. We'll just put a hashtag here, and we'll go ahead and just say you can even add links, and you can just make that target wherever you want to. The user will be able to hover from the hover element inside of the tooltip so that they are able to click on the links. Okay, and then at the end Actually, I put that in the wrong spot, so I actually want to close strong here at the end. And that's it. That's all you do for your first tooltip. All of the others will follow along the same suits. We just copy and paste this. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll name this one right, bottom, and top. And the differences here are that this tooltip class will change for each one, for right, bottom, and top. This one will change to tooltip R, this one will change to tooltip B, and this one will change to tooltip T. And basically that's just using the class that's inside of the style sheet so that we can position that tooltip correctly next to the hovered element. So that's it for the hovering tooltips. Let's go ahead and create our first clickable tooltip. Same scenario, except for the class will actually be tip click. Okay. Same scenario here. We can actually copy and paste all of these here and just paste it into that, because it's all the same. You know, all the tooltips are the same, and like I said, the only difference is the class of tip click. And that's it for that. So let's go ahead and check out some of the CSS code here. So to do that, we'll go ahead and create a new file, CSS. Alright, so the first thing we're going to create in the CSS file is our main classes, which are tip and tip click. We want a position of relative, okay, and we want to also make it important. And then we want a display of inline block. And this is so that the tooltips are contained within the same block that the hovered element is in. Next thing we want to do is target tip, tooltip L, tip, tooltip B, tip, tooltip R, and tip, tooltip T. And then we will target tip click, tooltip L, tip click, tooltip B, tip click, tooltip R, and tip click, tooltip T. Okay, so we're going to target all of the tooltips and give them a display of none, because we don't want these tooltips to show until something is hovered over or clicked on. Okay, so for the next thing, we want to show the tooltips when something is hovered over or clicked on. So to do that, we will use tip hover, target tooltip L, and tip hover, target tooltip B, tip hover, tooltip R, and tip hover, tooltip T. And then the next one for the click tips is going to be a little different. We will put tip click, target A, focus, okay, and then we want to immediately select the preceding element, which is tooltip L. So tip click, select A, select the link, focus, immediate select the preceding element, which is tooltip B. Tip click, select a focus, preceding element, tooltip R, tip a focus, preceding element, tooltip T. And for this, we simply put a display of block. So now we can actually show the tooltip when something is hovered over or clicked on. Pretty simple, right? Next thing we want to do is actually style the tooltips themselves. And for the most part, it's going to be the same for every tooltip. But there are a few differences, and I'll show you that here in a minute when we get done with this. So, tooltip L, tooltip B, tooltip R, tooltip T. Go ahead and add a background for older browsers of a dark gray. Add a background of RGBA 0,0,0.85, so we made it black with an 85% opacity, and this is for IE9. Then we'll add a background of linear gradient, and from the top of RGBA 51, 51, 51 at 85% opacity. Add 0%, and RGBA of black with a 0.85% opacity. Alright? That is for all future browsers, because all browsers will eventually support background linear gradient without using anything like a -moz or -webkit or anything like that. Okay, so next thing will be background moz linear gradient, and again we want to put top RGBA of 51, 51, 51, 0.85 at 0% from the top, and RGBA of black, which is 0, 0, 0, and 0.85% opacity. Okay, so for the next one we'll put background Webkit gradient. This one will be a little bit different. We will go ahead and put linear left top, left bottom, and a color stop. Go ahead and add 0% with RGBA 51, 51, 51, and at 85% opacity again. And then we'll put another color stop, 100%, RGBA black, which is 0, 0, 0, and 85%. I don't know why I got rid of that, but and this is for Chrome and Safari. Okay, and for the next one we will be using Pi background gradient, which is the CSS Pi version for IE7 and 8. And the way that works is we use Pi background, and we put linear gradient, and this will be essentially the same as the previous ones of top with RGBA 51, 51, 51 at 85% opacity, as well as RGBA black 0, 0, 0 at 85% opacity. Alright, and that's it for the linear gradients. So for our next style on the tooltips, we need to add a box shadow. So we're going to put moz box shadow, and we'll make it 0, 0, 6 pixels and 1 pixels, and then add a color of medium gray 66666. Alright, and for our next one, the Webkit box shadow, and again 0, 0, 6 pixels, 1 pixel, and a color of medium gray. And then for the last one, and this always needs to be last since we are using a cascading style sheet, which means that last is first. So we'll use box shadow. Eventually all browsers will support it. Again, it is 0, 0, 6 pixels, 1 pixel with a color of 666, 666 medium gray. Now we will add a border solid, and we'll make that solid border white. Alright, so the border is basically separating the inner content from the outer box of the tooltip. Now we want to go ahead and add a min width of 200 pixels so that we can stay in position with the hover element instead of making it too small and then it doesn't fit within the same wrapper of the hover element. So with a min width of 200, it should work fine. Next thing we want to add is a padding of 5 pixels. Make the position absolute so that we can put it anywhere we'd like to. Text align of center, and this is very important so that the tooltips are always at the top. We'll go ahead and add a z-index of 10. So that's it for the common tooltip styles. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the differences. So for tooltip left, we need to pull it from the left at minus 226 pixels, and then we need to pull it from the top at minus 28 pixels. And this is really the only difference between common styles and specific styles. Okay, so the next one will be tooltip B. Push it down by 30 pixels and pull it from the left by minus 183 pixels. Tooltip right, pull it from the right at minus 226 pixels and pull it from the top at minus 28 pixels. And the last one is tooltip T for top. We want to push it up by 26 pixels and pull it from the left by minus 186 pixels. And now that we've styled the actual tooltips, we want to go ahead and create the arrow that points towards the hover element. So to do that, we want to use tooltip L and use the before selector, R, before, tooltip B, before selector, and tooltip T, before selector. Okay, now to create the actual arrow, we will use border style of solid, and then we will make the border width 10 pixels. We want to create a height of 0 as well as a width of 0. Make a position of absolute so that we can put the arrow anywhere we want to. A display of block. And then here's the real magic. We want to use the content declaration like so. Okay, and that's it for styling the actual arrow. It does have a couple of specific styles that need to be taken care of. So to show you that, we'll use tooltip L. Again, we'll use before. We want one side of each arrow, depending on the direction of the tooltip, whether it's left, bottom, top, or right. We want one side to be straight, obviously, to create an arrow, and then the other sides to be angled. And we also want that straight side to be flush with the tooltip so that it actually looks like one element. Okay, so to create that straight side, what we're going to do is create a color to the border on one side of the element, and then the rest of the sides are going to be transparent. So we use border, color, transparent, 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 and dark gray. Alright, and it's simple as that. Alright, so since this is the left tooltip, we went ahead and make the left hand side of the arrow straight and the right hand side the angled portions. We want to move it down a little bit by 5 pixels and pull it from the right by -20 pixels. Okay, so for the next ones it's pretty much the same scenario, except for, again, we will use the before, and then we will put the color in a different area. So it would be border color, transparent, transparent, dark gray, transparent. And then we push it by 5 pixels and we pull it from the top at -20 pixels. And then next will be tooltip right, before, push it from the top at 5 pixels and pull it from the left at -20 pixels. And then we forgot to add the border color, so we need to do that. So that will be transparent, dark gray, transparent, transparent. And lastly will be tooltip T, before, with a border color of dark gray, transparent, transparent, and transparent. And then we will push it by 5 pixels and pull it from the bottom at -20 pixels. Okay, and that's it for the CSS code. So to go over it, we have our main containers with a position of relative and a display of inline block. We want to hide all of our tooltips until they are clicked on or hovered over with a display of none. And now we want to show the tooltips when they are hovered over or clicked on, so we use the selector hover, or for the clickable version we use focus on the link, and then we immediately select the preceding element, which is tooltip L, with a display of black. For the actual tooltips, the most important thing here is z-index 10, so that it is always at the top, and position of absolute, as well as min width of 200 pixels. And these left and margin tops, top, left, right, margin top, these are all important so that we can have the arrow facing the hovered element. Otherwise it would be outside of the hovered element. Next thing would be for the arrow, we have a position of absolute so that we can do whatever we want with it. We have our content magic, and then we have our border color, which is at different areas so that we can actually create the triangle for an arrow. After you have done all that, you should see something like this. When you hover over it, your tooltip magically pops up. You can hover inside of it to get a link, hover inside of it, hover inside of it, hover inside of it. Or if you have it on a mobile version, or even if you want it to be actionable content, you can use the clickable tooltips. So you click on it and it will show the tooltip. Click outside of it and it goes away. Same thing here, same thing here, and same thing here. So that's it for the CSS3 tooltips. Thanks a lot for checking out this tutorial, and I really hope that you learned something valuable and something that you can add to your web design repertoire. Alright, so until next time, take care and good luck.